Indeed, cried Eugenie, you are very pale. Oh, do not be alarmed, I have been so for many days. Artless as she was, the young girl knew that this was an opportunity to leave, and besides, Madame de Villefort came to her assistance. Retire, Valentine, said she, you are really suffering, and these ladies will excuse you. Drink a glass of pure water, it will restore you. Valentine kissed Eugenie, bowed to Madame Danglars, who had already risen to take her leave, and went out. That poor child, said Madame de Villefort when Valentine was gone, she makes me very uneasy, and I should not be astonished if she had some serious illness. Meanwhile, Valentine, in a sort of excitement which she could not quite understand, had crossed Edward's room without noticing some trick of the child, and through her own had reached the little staircase. She was within 3 steps of the bottom, she already heard Morel's voice, when suddenly a cloud passed over her eyes, her stiffened foot missed the step, her hands had no power to hold the baluster, and falling against the wall she lost her balance wholly and toppled to the floor. Morel bounded to the door, opened it, and found Valentine stretched out at the bottom of the stairs. Quick as a flash, he raised her in his arms and placed her in a chair. Valentine opened her eyes. Oh, what a clumsy thing I am, said she with feverish volubility, I don't know my way. I forgot there were 3 more steps before the landing. You have hurt yourself, perhaps, said Morel. What can I do for you, Valentine? Valentine looked around her, she saw the deepest terror depicted in Noirtier's eyes. Don't worry, dear grandpapa, said she, endeavoring to smile, it is nothing, I was giddy, that is all. Another attack of giddiness, said Morel, clasping his hands. Oh, attend to it, Valentine, I entreat you. But no, said Valentine, no, I tell you it is all past, and it was nothing. Now, let me tell you some news. Eugenie is to be married in a week, and in 3 days there is to be a grand feast, a betrothal festival. We are all invited, my father, Madame de Villefort, and I at least, I understood it so. when will it be our turn to think of these things? Oh, Valentine, you who have so much influence over your grandpapa, try to make him answer soon. And do you, said Valentine, depend on me to stimulate the tardiness and arouse the memory of grandpapa? Yes, cried Morel, make haste. So long as you are not mine, Valentine, I shall always think I may lose you. Oh, replied Valentine with a convulsive movement, oh, indeed, Maximilian, you are too timid for an officer, for a soldier who, they say, never knows fear. Ah, ha, ha. She burst into a forced and melancholy laugh, her arms stiffened and twisted, her head fell back on her chair, and she remained motionless. The cry of terror which was stopped on Noirtier's lips, seemed to start from his eyes. Morel understood it, he knew he must call assistance. The young man rang the bell violently, the housemaid who had been in Mademoiselle Valentine's room, and the servant who had replaced Barrois, ran in at the same moment. Valentine was so pale, so cold, so inanimate that without listening to what was said to them they were seized with the fear which pervaded that house, and they flew into the passage crying for help. Madame Danglars and Eugenie were going out at that moment. They heard the cause of the disturbance. I told you so, exclaimed Madame de Villefort. Poor child. Chapter 94. Maximilian's avowal. At the same moment M. de Villefort's voice was heard calling from his study. What is the matter? Morel looked at Noirtier, who had recovered his self-command, and with a glance indicated the closet where once before under somewhat similar circumstances, he had taken refuge. He had only time to get his hat and throw himself breathless into the closet when the procureur's footstep was heard in the passage. Villefort sprang into the room, ran to Valentine, and took her in his arms. A physician, M. d'Avrigny, cried Villefort, or rather I will go for him myself. He flew from the apartment, and Morel at the same moment darted out at the other door. He had been struck to the heart by a frightful recollection. The conversation he had heard between the doctor and Villefort the night of Madame de Saint-Méran's death, recurred to him. These symptoms, to a less alarming extent, were the same which had preceded the death of Barrois. At the same time Monte Cristo's voice seemed to resound in his ear with the words he had heard only 2 hours before. Whatever you want, Morel, come to me, I have great power. More rapidly than thought, he darted down the Rue Matignon, and thence to the Avenue des Champs-Élysées. Meanwhile M. de Villefort arrived in a hired cabriolet at M. d'Avrigny's door. He rang so violently that the porter was alarmed. Villefort ran upstairs without saying a word. The porter knew him, and let him pass, only calling to him. In his study, Monsieur Procureur in his study. Villefort pushed, or rather forced, the door open. "Ah," said the doctor, "is it you?" "Yes," said Villefort, closing the door after him, "it is I, who am come in my turn to ask you if we are quite alone." "Doctor, my house is accursed." "What?" said the latter with apparent coolness, but with deep emotion, "have you another invalid?" "Yes, doctor," cried Villefort, clutching his hair, "yes." d'Avrigny's look implied. "I told you it would be so." Then he slowly uttered these words. "Who is now dying in your house? What new victim is going to accuse you of weakness before God?"